Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome friends once again to the trade module on it's the NPTEL module on strategic trade and protectionism. We have been trying to explain in the present lecture in the in this week on purely on strategic strategic trade, especially protectionism related aspects, where largely we need to emphasize many aspects of protectionism, especially tariff. So, we have already unfolded the discussion of tariff in the last two lectures. Now, here we are targeting our lecture on the very 29th lecture of week number 6 on effective protection. Even if a tariff is imposed, that may not be so effective. So, I mean usually tariff is imposed to protect our industries, whether industries have come off or actually replaced the imports or not over the time period, it is very important to discuss. So, therefore, protectionism, I mean tariff is not just imposing a percentage of taxes, it is rather important to find out how much it has replaced the import commodities. That will be really strengthening the country's trade baskets and its domestic production. So, therefore, effective protection is very important and is the focus of this lecture. So, myself Pratap Mohanty, faculty member at IIT Roorkee. Now, before going to start with the effective rate of protection, what exactly the protection all about practiced in different rounds of WTO, and how India is actually poised with various forms of tariff rates in reality. In this context, we just wanted to emphasize here that Uruguay round was one of the rounds of WTO discussion, where there have been commitment to cut tariffs and also define a bind rate for the cost of their customs duty rates to a level which can be very difficult, which would be very difficult to raise further. So, Uruguay round was actually very successful in that regard. Then in a Doha round, DDA also Doha development round, in its current negotiations, which has given lots of emphasis on the agriculture and non-agricultural market access. And broadly WTO tariffs are of two types. One is called bound rate, where optimum limit or the ceiling limits are defined as per the schedules or list of the commitments. Then another one is the exact rate, or that is called applied rates. The rates where the member country is charged usually, and which can be lower than the bound rates. WTO in its inception since 1995 estimates that India's applied most favored nation import tariffs are 13.8% and highest of any major economy as per the latest WTO estimates. So, tariff on the average 5% or less on industrial products in developed nations, but are much higher in developing nations, as we have also emphasized in the last lecture. So, whereas in 2018 Indian government in cooperation with the FIEO, Federation of Indian Exporters, debuted its trade portal called India Trade Portal. You can refer to this website. It's given here, and all the data related to restrictions, tariff related information or custom related information are observed here, and these also gives on the basis of HS classification or standardized products classifications, harmonized standard based classification, HS classification. It publishes applied tariffs and other customs rates applicable to imports. So, India's trade portal, I mean this India trade portal is the government of India recently released, which provides information on latest tariff and duty by its harmonized standard codes, as I mentioned. India's tariff also is also characterized by many disparities between the WTO bound rates and the most favored nation rates as per the prescription of WTO, and accordingly Indian rates are actually varying as that of other countries. Now, as per the latest WTO data, India's average bound tariff is 48.5%, while its MFN average tariff is only 13.8% as per the WTO 2017 data. And the bound tariff for especially for agriculture products is 113.5% because of the fact that India has been trying to protect agriculture sector. Now, applied rates are also relatively high, and on a trade weighted basis the average agriculture tariff is on basically on a trade weighted average basis, the average tariff for agriculture is 32.8%. So, in addition to that, while India has a bound agriculture tariff lines in the WTO discussion, over 30% of India's non-agriculture tariff remain unbound. So, more than 30% of non-agricultural actually not attached with any bound rates. Now, given these large disparities between bound and unbound rate or agriculture and non-agriculture products, US exporters face tremendous pressure or uncertainty due to India, and since India has been changing its rates considerably due to some kind of flexibility attached with the Indian rates with the norms of WTO. Now, despite its goal of moving towards association, I mean ASEAN tariff rates, there are different tariff rates by ASEAN nations, association of Southeast Asian nations, approximately 5%, which is much lower, half the rate, less than half the rate of the average. India has not systematically reduced its customs duty in the last 6 years. So, India maintains high rates on a number of goods and operates a number of complicated duty drawbacks, duty exemption and duty remission schemes for imports. India maintains high basic customs duties and in some cases exceeding 20% on drug formulation, including life saving drugs and finished medicines, which are listed on the WHO list of essential medicines. Many of India's bound rates on agriculture products are also among the highest in the world, as we said, ranging from 113%, ranging from 100% to 300%. While many Indian applied tariff rates are lower, near about 32% on agriculture products, they still present a significant barrier to trade in agriculture goods and processed goods. So, therefore, protection is at a higher cap so far as agriculture products are concerned. Now, the large gap between bound and unbound or the bound and applied tariff is in the agriculture sector allows India to use tariff policy to make frequent adjustment to the level of protection provided to domestic producers, especially creating uncertainty for importers and exporters. For example, from citing certain facts, in November 2017 through March 2018, over 6 months, around 6 months, India raised import duty from 0% to 60% in chickpeas, 50% on peas, 40% on large chickpeas, 30% on lentils and severely impacting US pulse exports to India. So, these are the facts as per the latest figures. On 20 June 2018, India announced an intention to adopt tariffs ranging from 10% to 50% on various products imported from United States in retaliation against the President's decision to adjust US imports of steel and aluminum articles under section 232 of in Trade Expansion Act of 1962 as amended. So, these are the figures quoted from WTO sites, you can refer and clarify accordingly. Now, coming to the discussion of effective protection, we are supposed to understand the two concepts very clearly. One is called nominal protection and another is called effective protection, or the nominal rate of protection or effective rate of protection. Sometimes these are equal, sometimes these are not equal. Now, nominal is simply the tariff rate. Nominal rate is simply defined as the tariff rate levied on given products, and the amount of protection given to any one product depends not only on the tariff rate, but also on the inputs used to produce the good. So, therefore, the effective protection is not just the nominal tariff labeled or charged on the final products, it also relate to the kind of replacement made by the inputs from other countries. Whereas, effective rate of protection is nothing but the nominal rate plus the tariff on the intermediate products. These two must be understood. So, we will adopt a value added approach, how much the protection has actually enabled the country to add value. So, we will measure through value added approach, price of a good minus the cost of intermediate goods used to produce it, the contribution of labor and capital at a given stage of production. This is quite important for understanding. Now, from this slide, from this particular page, we can infer one thing, how to calculate the effective protection. We just wanted to say that it is the value added after net value added divided by the value added. So, how to find out the net value added? Net value added is basically the price or the final value of the product after tariff minus the value added, total value of the production before tariff divided by the total value of production before tariff. If we do so, we can find out the impact of protection or the effective rate of protection. So, effective rate of protection is actually measured by value added star divided by minus value added divided by value added. So, here if the price of for an example, if the price of laptop is 1000, value of the foreign inputs is 600 and domestic value added is 400, that in these two value of foreign inputs is 400 plus domestic value added is 400. So, the final price is actually 1000 as to start with. The example, we do not have any tariff at this moment, the effective tariff is also 0. Now, if there is a 20% tariff, so 20% simply is called nominal tariff as we say on the final product. That means, final product value is 1000, if 20% is charged it is 200. So, 1000 plus 200 it is 1200. So, now it is interesting to note how much value added we have made. So, value added is actually is 600 divided by the original value. So, this is basically 1200 minus 600 divided by 1200. So, this is protection is actually 1200 minus 600 is the value added domestically divided by, because the foreign inputs is 600. So, we have added a value of extra 600 divided by 1200 is equal to half. 600 divided by 1200 half. So, this is basically 50%. So, 50% is the answer so far as effective rate of protection is concerned. Now, let us make another case to it by adding taxes for the intermediary goods. We said 20% tariff is imposed on the final good in this previous example. Now, suppose a 50% tariff on inputted inputs, if is there 50%, then now 1200 they have now inputted inputs we have made, because of that the value added is actually reduced to 300 only, okay, because we have now higher inputs. So, 50% of inputs are now taxed. So, now 50% only value added left, there are 600 value added, 50% is taxed. So, only 300 left. So, 300 it is basically how much, how to calculate then 1200, I mean what is this 1200. So, what is the net value added here? So, net value added in the previous example what was positive at 600, but now the inputs itself is actually of 900. So, 1200 minus 900, so this is basically 300, so divided by 1200, so it is 1/4. So, 300 divided by 1200, which is basically 25%. Now, 1/4 is actually protected, which is in fact negative. Why negative? Because of the fact that our domestic value is 600, where the cost is actually 900. So, it is of minus 300 is the is a negative part attached due to higher tax on the inputted inputs. So, effective rate of protection are higher than nominal rates if intermediate goods are imported with a tariff are imported tariff free. If intermediate are tariffed, it reduces the effective rate of protection and can turn into negative as well. So, this is what is explained. Now, so what do you mean by the rate of effective protection? It simply talks about protection that is actually provided to domestic producers of import competing commodity. When an S1 actually imposes a lower tariff on imported inputs, then on the final commodity produced with the inputs, the effective protection usually exceeds the nominal tariff rate. Now, we said value added divided by the value added after tariff, this is value added tariff minus value added divided by value added is nothing but the answer for effective rate of protection. Now, here this can be also answered. Here we say G stands for effective rate of protection, this is not T. T is the nominal tariff, T is the nominal tariff which we have discussed, and TI is the tariff for the imported inputs, and AI is the value added to the percentage of inputted input used in the final product. How much percentage of inputs which are imported to produce the final product. Generally 80% of the raw materials to get 100% of output, that means 80% is the cost which are inputted. So, this is 1 minus A is basically AI is called value added, net value added, which is mentioned here. So, AI is the ratio of cost of inputted inputs to price of final commodity with no tariff. If there is no tariff, then this is the cost of actually inputted inputs to the final price. Now, rest of the explanation I have already made. Now, given this equation, let us test with certain examples. So, examples are here given like this. If AI is equal to 0, that means there is no inputted inputs to the final price of the product. So, that means there is no raw materials which are imported. So, this boils down to be 0, this boils down to be 0. So, 1 minus 0 here is 1, this only nothing but G is equal to T when AI is equal to 0. All right. So, that means whenever there is no imported inputs, so there is no effective protection, basically the nominal protection is your effective protection. Now, suppose let us start with certain facts. Now, if T is equal to, let us start with if T, that is the nominal tariff is 10%, this is 10%, and AI stands for 80% or 0.8. So, 80%, and TI is equal to 0. That means, the tariff on the inputs which are from imports, the tariff of imports on the as a raw materials is 0. So, imported inputs are attached with no tariff, let it be. So, that means TI is 0, this part is 0. Now, AI is 1.1 minus 0.8. So, this is 0.1. So, this is 10%. So, 10%, this is basically this is equal to 0.1 divided by 0.2, 0.2. So, it is basically half, equal to half. So, it is nothing but 50%. So, G is equal to 50%. Whenever we have this scenario, this context, so the effective protection is 50%. So, whereas the nominal protection T is 10%, we have already mentioned here. So, when T is 10%, effective protection is actually 50%. Now, this is because of the fact that there is no tariff for the imported inputs. Now, when there is tariff for the imported inputs, let Ti be Ti now, instead of 0 let it be 5%. So, 0.05 now, which is equal to 0.05. If we apply it in the same equation, given all rest the same, G is equal to 30%. When basically when Ti increases, the price for or the tariff on the imported inputs are higher, the effective rate of protection actually declines. So, when Ti is higher, Ti is higher or same. So, now you can find when it is 10%, it is now 1% or 10%. When Ti equal 20%, when it exceeds a limit beyond 10%, now when it is 20%, now we have got a negative figure, 30% negatively affected, effective protection is not there at all, rather it is negative. Okay. So, it is not protecting the domestic boundaries when the raw materials prices are actually exceeding than that of the nominal tariff. So, therefore, it is not to go for raw materials imports, better to have finished product imports when the raw material cost by tariff rate is very high. Okay. So, so these gives complete discussion on effective rate of protection, and then accordingly we have received better ideas of how to get it. This is broadly the value added method. This is the value added after tariff on the numerator, and this is the value added before tariff in the denominator. Now, what are the other discussion then? Other discussions are like in the as I already discussed in the pre-Uruguay and post-Uruguay round, this is the one we have discussed in the previous class, where there has been net fall in the tariff structure, especially after the Uruguay round, and it has used cascading tariff effect, because if one country imposes tariff, another is going to retaliate. So, therefore, there has been agreements to reduce the price for all the products. Now, let us have the discussion on so far as effective protection is concerned, which rates by which country are very important. Now, we have already unfolded the discussion on small country versus large country debate. Now, in our previous week we discussed the terms of trade argument, that terms of trade, the small country if imposing a tariff is not going to change the terms of trade on the world prices. Those small countries earning certain revenue out of tariff, but actually demotivates the prices. The final price settlement is not going to be for the small country, in fact it is rather against to them. So, now economists distinguish clearly the small country and large country analysis of imposing tariff. So, large country that impose enough of a particular product, so that it imposes a tariff, and exporting country will reduce its price of the good in order to keep its share of the large country's market. So, therefore, a large country has huge holding over imposing tariff, because it can control the supply of another country or the exporting country like India and China. So, in theory, large country can improve the national welfare by imposing tariff, because it contributes to the terms of trade arguments positively, and as long as their trading partners do not retaliate, then this is going to be positively impacting the welfare of the big country. But if the trading country or the partner country retaliate in other products, then it might not be effective. So far as the tariff in the large country case is concerned, we have seen that the world prices after tariff, is getting affected. So, there will be higher positions. We can have domestic price, world price, before tariff, after tariff. There are other possibilities. Basically, we wanted to say it constrains the quantity. These are the figures we already discussed. Now, what about the small nation debates? And in the small nation context, we need to identify whether the small country can able to capture the large country after imposing tariff. Now, small country, as we know that it has less capture and will not affect the price in the world market when imposing a tariff. So, the domestic price of the importable commodity will rise by the full amount of the tariff for individual producers and consumers in the small nation. So, the price actually remains constant for a nation as a whole, because the nation collects the tariff. Okay. So, volume of trade for small nation declines, because they are charging higher prices, but in the world market they are not going to influence the terms of trade. Terms of trade do not change. So, the welfare actually falls. Now, in this context, as I already mentioned in an earlier week, the general equilibrium set off, there are some adjustment in the trade basket. Now, if the before trade is here and after trade the countries is lying somewhere at world prices with 1 as the ratio of prices, PW is the relative prices. Now, if the small country, here we are discussing small country context, if imposing a double 100% tariff on the relative prices. Now, temporarily the small country might basically it imposes prices. Now, look at this is the before tariff. Now, after tariff the price within the domestic country will actually rise. So, now I mean they will come back to the original level of satisfaction or the production possibility frontier at F. Now, the price ratio is now doubled at 2. Now, with this reason what the country will do, country gets higher prices, and country collects certain extent of revenue out of their tariffs on the products those are imported, but they cannot able to influence the world prices, I mean the terms of trade, they can simply influence their domestic prices. So, what is going to happen, those revenue which collected by the small country, if they simply distribute to their consumers, their consumption level might be reaching at a higher point instead of a point F. Okay. So, I mean look at the price line, this price line may be valid for a very short period for the small country case. Whereas, as we already said, in the larger context for the world market as a whole, this is not going to be changed, the price line still will be maintained at 1. So, there will be a parallel line. So, the parallel line will pass through this and they might arrive at point H for final consumption, but actually they end up with a net loss in terms of trade, because their terms of trade still parallel to the line as we discussed here at PW at 1. So, therefore, the small country is actually badly affected in this context. These are the discussion we already made with the help of Stolper-Samuelson theorem, where the small country relatively suffers. So, an increase in the relative price of commodity raises the return of factors used intensively in the production commodity, as they mentioned. They also opined the real return to the nation's cash factor of production will rise with the imposition of tariff. We have already discussed number of times of this. A tariff for a large country rather is different. So, there will be a shift causes the imposing offer curve to shift or rotate towards the axis measuring the importable commodity by the amount of the tariff. So, large country can influence the changes. So, they can under the circumstances a large country, a reduction in trade volume will occur, and there will be a reduction in trade volume will reduce if there will be reduction in trade volume, it will reduce welfare, but improvement in terms of trade will be observed so far as large country is concerned. So, whether welfare actually rises or falls, it actually depends on the net effect of these two. Now, the general, as I just simply said, the terms of trade diagram can be explained, and so there will be new offer curve explanation already made in the last week. So, the world prices can be influenced, and accordingly a new equilibrium point will be settled instead of this. Okay. So, last part to discuss is identifying the optimum tariff. Then what could be the optimum tariff? Like here there are possibility of changes, because one country is going to impose tariff and its offer curve will be different. So, the net prices stands at the terms of trade stands at 0.8 as per our earlier example. Now, so another country might retaliate. So, if they are retaliate, then what is the optimum tariff? What is the base tariff then? So, the optimum tariff simply maximize the net benefit resulting from improvement in the nation's terms of trade against negative effect of declining trade volume. So, the terms of trade improve for the imposing nation, those of the trade partner deteriorate and reducing welfare of the trade partner. So, trade partner will likely retaliate, and as I once mentioned, and impose its own optimum tariff. World as a whole is made worse off as again from optimum tariff are less than and then losses of trade partners. And the optimum tariff is written by all their retaliation. Sometimes we have this kind of shift, for another country is going to have a shift. So, finally, they will end up with a solution. That solution will actually define a final point of equilibrium. So, both the country will retaliate and they will arrive. Usually equalization of price is expected, but after retaliation a tariff will be suggested. That tariff is going to be best suited for both the country. But whenever there are two rates different, cannot be defined as a equilibrium rate, usually it coincides with the one as the relative price. So, that will be all about guiding optimum tariff. Optimum tariff is derived through general equilibrium setups. It is not easily understood through demand and supply arguments. So, therefore, we need to have advanced software like GTAP with those data can be very useful in explaining optimum tariff. So, I have largely discussed the effects of tariff, small country, large country, effective rate of protection, different types of tariffs. So, in the next class we will open the discussion for non-tariff barriers. With this, I think I should stop here. Thank you.